Hey, shalom, shalom. It's your brother Rattazar Allah from GMS London Camp. First and foremost, want to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and blessings to the hopeful, sincere elect, Bakoya Kodash. That's the holy elect, Baha Rattazar, in and around the four winds of the earth. Greetings. It's a quick upload. Since America, it's become that sinking ship, CTD circling the drain, and is about to go into perdition, meaning destruction by way of the nuclear missiles, that's going to be shot from different corners of the earth, mainly from the Medes, modern day Russians, Gog and Magog. You got the de-dollarization of the American dollar, the devaluing of the American dollar that's losing its strength, its power over the world reserve currency that it once was, still is, but it's losing its strength over the whole earth, as you got other nations, the BRIC nations in particular, Russia, China, Iran, so on and so forth, that are basically dealing with themselves, between themselves, with their own monetary systems, and trying to leave out basically the American dollar, that debt note that got all these nations into that incurable debt for the past how many years, man, for something called the petrodollar. But now even Esau, these wicked elite, starting the Edomites are pushing for real money, which is actually gold and silver that come out of the earth, real commodities that come out of the earth, resources, because that's what you call natural resources that come out of the earth that have intrinsic value, something that's worth something, man, that never loses its value, basically. But the American dollar does basically based upon nothing, a paper debt note, basically, that's owed to the bankers, private bank called the FDR, the Federal Reserve Bank, owned by the British, basically, over here in Europe, or Great Britain, should I say. It's become that part of that Ibatya, that thick clay, that's that heavy laden debt that America's incurred over the past how many years, according to the national debt clock, it's in the trillions upon trillions, and that all that money is owed into the British bankers, to the British banking families over here, the wicked elite, starting with the Rothschilds and families of that nature, that own America lock, stock and barrel, man, according to their so-called constitution, because America never really got their independence, man. They're still owned by the British. But now Esau's pushing for real, actual money to be legalized. Actual gold and silver coins are going to be pushed in society as the falling or devaluation of the American dollar is rising more and more, since Florida is going to be the first state to officially legalize gold and silver coins as currency, marking a bold return to hard money. And it's funny because Apostle Elder Tahar was always talking about gold and silver going back many years ago, brothers first came into this truth, and how in these last days that's going to be basically a thing where that's going to come back into major focus, because they're going to start, people are not going to rely on the American dollar no more, the paperback system, and everything's going to go digital anyway, which is another folly system that's going to be set up, futile iniquity, set up of a currency that's backed by nothing and has no intrinsic value. It's just going to be a bunch of zeros on bunch of zeros on a computer screen, and they're going to make people believe that actually has value, credits and debits. They're going to put in your heaped technology, in the near coming future, going into the mark of the beast system. It says gold and silver are now legal tender for all transactions, man, because that's real money. And according to the scriptures, going back to ancient times until modern day times, that is actual real money that comes out of the earth, resources, commodities that come out of the earth, which these banking elite really actually deal with. They deal with gold and silver coins and bullions and so on and so forth. They don't deal with the paperback system that people put their trust in, because that's not real. That's monopoly money, basically. That's not real money. Real money is something that holds intrinsic value, like gold and silver and other commodities and resources that come out of the earth. That's why even in you got the Greek mythology, they got the word there for Hades. going back to the word Pluto, which is supposed to be basically representing all the riches that come out of the earth. You need to go into that more history, more more frequently, I should say. We should go into that more frequently. But if you go into that word Hades, or what they called hell, which doesn't exist, is Greek mythology, part of the Jewish fables that Esau pushes through Roman Catholicism. And you even got guys in so-called Israelite faith that are pushing that madness doctrine of hell, the hell doctrine, because that's a way of making money by fear-mongering for their congregation. And that's the word for Hades there in the Greek would have been Pluto, which is basically a representation of the natural resources that come out of the earth. So that's what that hell doctrine incorporates. Basically, it's a money scheme. It's a Ponzi scheme, basically, to basically rob the poor of the people, man. To rob the poor of the people, poverty pimps, as they call them, the church leaders. They're nothing but a bunch of poverty pimps, man. And you got poverty pimps in this truth of ours also, in the Hebrew Israelite thing of ours, man. And they're being exposed for who they truly are. So that's real money, man. Real money is gold and silver, natural commodities that come out of the earth. And now they're going to make gold and silver tender, legally tender for people to make transactions and purchase things. Because, it makes perfect sense before they crash the whole system and turn everything digital. And that's why even Apostle Elder was always telling brothers, to make sure you buy just purchase and invest in gold and silver, because you never know, on a rainy day, situations like this might pop up. And look, Spirit is revealing that they're bringing back gold and silver coins. So now, for brothers that ain't got, all those paper notes, but you might have a lot of gold and reserves and, silver coins or jewelry that you don't really use or whatever, some old family relics and all that, you can, use that to exchange for for purchasing goods and so on and so forth, or go to the bank and get basically your weights and measures converted basically into dollars, and get your conversions on, and go and purchase whatever you need to purchase to get your daily bread, so to speak. So it's a good thing anyway. But either way, this is just showing that America's fallen, and these devils are heaping treasures for the last days, man. That's why the Lord said, "Woe to the rich, for you have heaped treasures for the last days, man." Because this is the end of this America. This is another example of why America's going to be destroyed, man. Because their gold and silver is cankered. It's going to be a witness against them. So it's going to go straight to the scriptures, just to the point that gold and silver is represents real money, real wealth, so-called generational wealth, even going back to Father Abraham, because he was a man that was very rich in cattle, as it says here, Genesis 13:2, it says, and Abraham was very rich in cattle and in gold and in silver and in gold. So he was well off, man. He was very wealthy, so-called what they would call generational wealth today. He was well to do, and he had servants and so on and so forth, man. And he was taking care of a whole bunch of people. He had his own so-called personal standing army, personal security squad that he looked after, and he was rich in cattle, and that's another resource that man would need. That's why you're supposed to have own farmland and so on and so forth, because that's part of a family business, so to speak. Every man's supposed to be able to have his own farm or have his own ranch and cattle and so on and so forth, because that brings forth what? Food. And through food you be able to convert that and make money. So go to the market, sellers, and buy and sell basically, and then you can convert your riches into gold and silver, so on and so forth, different measures, man. So this is what real riches is all about. Even the man Job, you go to Job, the first chapter, he said he was the richest man in the East. Why was he rich? Because he was rich in cattle, resources, human resources. He had servants, and that also means that he had, commodities that come out of the earth. The Plutos of the earth, man. He had the reserve. He had the reserves of gold and silver in his purchase, man. And that's why he was the richest man known in that time. He was the richest man in the East. So-called modern day Mensa Musa, so to speak, or ancient day of Mensa Musa, so to speak, should I say? Because he was known for being the richest man during his reign in what was it, Timbuktu, whatever it was, and he was known for owning a whole bunch of gold, having the most gold in that region basically. And even going back to King David, King Solomon, King David, son King Solomon was also known for being the wisest king, so he was also very wealthy. So he was also, stocked up, so to speak, with gold and silver, bullions and all of that. So that's real money, man. That's real wealth. Basically, that creates generational wealth where you can pass your, your legacy on down to your family, so on and so forth. Keep it going, so to speak. That's what makes the world go around, man. And these wicked elite, they know this. That's why they went around the earth stealing everyone's resources, man, and owning all the gold, all the diamonds, all the silver, all the resources that come out of the earth. These devils own it, because they know that that's real resources. That represents real riches, and now they own peoples too. So this is what it's about. It's a fight for power, with these different nations. But ultimately, all this is gonna be given to the children of Israel, starting with the elect, because the Lord said that the wicked are gonna vomit up all the riches that they've stolen, and that's gonna be transitioned and passed on to the children of Israel in the Lord's kingdom. That's why it says the gates are gonna be open continually and never be shut, basically day or night, because they're going to be bringing in the forces of the Gentiles. That includes all their resources, the gold and silver, and human resources too, slaves, So Haggai 2:8 says, the silver is mine, and gold is mine, saith the Lord of hosts. So yeah, that's what represents real gold, represents real money, gold and silver. And that belongs into who? Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai. He created those, substances that come out of the earth, all elements that come out of the earth. And the Lord created it. So that's what represents real money, that has intrinsic value, something that actually holds weight. So this is James 5:1. It says misuse of riches, which you misused all the riches on the face of the earth. These wicked elite, Instead of just a prime example, America and the economy is turning to shit. But instead of America to take care of their roads and bridges and take care of their economy and the people, the citizens, so to speak, they rather give their money to immigrants, so to speak, and then also they pass all their money to foreign countries, man. They give all their money away for enabling countries to go to war, like Israel and so on and so forth, or Ukraine. They be giving off billions and billions of dollars away to the enemy to further their missions and agenda, because they're part of the agenda, the wicked elite. And while their own nations and peoples are suffering, man. So that's a misuse of riches. It says, go to you now, you rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. So this is the time where Esau is about to meet. His riches are not going to be able to deliver him in the day of trouble, man. Because it tells you about that in books of Proverbs and various other precepts. Riches are not going to be able to deliver you in the day of trouble. Roughly paraphrasing. They catch off wings and fly away. That's why the Lord said to put not trust in uncertain riches. Talking about this American cankered ass fractional reserve banking system that's backed by fraud. It says your riches are corrupted and your garments are moth-eaten. Yeah, that's why they call it the de-dollarization of the dollar, because that the riches are corrupted, man. And everyone's seeing it now. The nations that was drunk of the wine of that Babylonian whore, which represents America, the drunk of that Babylonian juice, says now in Jeremiah 51, what now the nations are mad, It says your gold and silver is cankered, when the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh, as it were, with fire. So ultimately, all this is not going to be, all this is not going to make America great again. This is going to lead to the downfall and more of a decline of the American society. And ultimately, America's going to get hit by nuclear missiles, and by their own number one arch enemy, which represents the Russians today. And that precept there in Isaiah 13, verse 17, it tells you they're not going to regard no gold and silver in that time. When it comes to, the the trash talking and the so-called negotiations and the shaking of the hands like they did the other day with Putin and Trump in regards to the stopping the war between Ukraine and Russia. That's a pipe dream, so to speak, of them coming together and letting bygones be bygones, because ultimately they're still going to go to war even if they do stop that that war that's going on between Ukraine and Russia. Ultimately still going to lead into World War III. Why? Because it's the will of the Lord being fulfilled. The war of Armageddon, the mountain of troops, has to come to pass because it's part of prophecy. And everyone has to fulfill the will of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. That's why he's gathering the nations to go to war. He says, your gold and silver is cankered and the rest of them, so like the rest of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. You have heaped treasures together for the last days. That's it. He said ultimately the nuclear missiles are gonna go flying, and America's gonna become, that pit full of destruction is gonna go into perdition, as prophesied in the book of the Revelation. The eighth head that came out of the seven, that shall go into perdition. Yeah, so that's America's final destination, man. Nuclear destruction, and that's only the beginning of these Edomites' woes, because after America's destroyed, their empire is destroyed. They're going into slavery for 1,000 years. And the ones that they hate the most, you tribes, you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans that make up the 12 tribes of Israel, man, starting with the elect. So, poetic justice, as they call it, man, justice is going to be served, man. True justice, should I say, is going to be served. Recompense. So there's one more precept here, but I want to get Isaiah 13 and 17 since I quoted that, and then I'll jump back to Ezekiel 28, should I say, and close out. So there's Isaiah 13 and 17, because it's funny, it's on the topic of gold and silver, but it says here, Babylon will fall to the Medes. The Medes represents modern day Russia today, it's so-called Gog and Magog. It's not talking about ancient Persia, like IUIC teaches, man, madness, showing you that their leader on down are waxing worse and worse, man, because they're just adding and taking away from the scriptures and not going into actual, the meaning of the words. Because you should understand that the Medes represents that nomad land, the whole entire Russia of today, where the land of the Medes was, where the sons of Japheth once took over, so to speak. But now that was a nomad land, and that's where Russia was basically birthed from. The modern day Gog and Magog, prophesied in Ezekiel 38, that represents Russia today, that represents Tsar Putin. That's why the big bear came down and met Trump the other day, and they had to, quell the beef, so to speak, because when those two clash heads, America representing the bald-headed eagle, and with the JOLL, with the JOLL type nose, and then you got Russia representing that bear, prophesied in Isaiah the 13th chapter, the feet that's going to destroy basically the standing image, or the 10 toes that represents the modern day NATO and the EU headed by America. They're going to be the end of America, man. They're going to bring that the standing image down to his knees and basically crumble it, man. Destroy the whole image, the feet of it, And America is Babylon the Great, which is going to be destroyed by way of the modern day Medes. So Russia represents the Medes today. It says Isaiah 13 and 17, behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, just like it tells in Ezekiel 38. The Lord says he's going to put hooks into their jaws. It says, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. Yeah, so even though America's pushing for gold and silver to be legally tender and all that, that's not going to deliver them in that the nuclear, the day of World War III, the war of Armageddon, because it tells you verse 18, their bows, which represents the ICBM missiles, the Russian missiles in particular, says also shall dash their young men to pieces, and they shall not have no pity on the fruit of the womb. It says their eyes shall not spare children, and Babylon, the glory, the kingdom of the beauty, or the Chaldees' excellency, shall be as when The Most High overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. How did the Lord overthrow Sodom and Gomorrah? By, splitting the atoms in the atmosphere and dropping fire and brimstone. But this time it's made it more sophisticated. Esau furbished his sword, so to speak, with technology, and managed to make nuclear weapons. They went from atomic weapons to nuclear. So those nuclear weapons are going to be used on America to destroy that habitation, man. Destroy Babylon the Great, the glory of the Chaldeans. The beauty of the Chaldeans' excellency is going to be overthrown and totally destroyed. So that's why that represents the modern day Russians. I'm not talking about Persia or Iran. Because America, Iran, it hasn't got that much nuclear capability to destroy the whole habitation of America, but Russia has. They got a few nukes, but they ain't got they ain't got the artillery that Russia has. And Russia's a guard onto Persia, and so-called the Persians today, Iran, so-called Iranians, which are the Persians, Carmenians, so to speak, prophesied in Ezekiel 38. Russia's going to be a guard onto them. So that's who that's talking about. So their gold and silver is not going to deliver them, even in the time of World War III. So let's get that last precept and close out Ezekiel 28 and 18. Once again, the money system is going to be a reason why America's going to be destroyed, because everyone's going to see that America's falling, man. Everyone can see America's falling. But the only thing left for America now is nuclear destruction, man. It says Ezekiel 28 and 18. It says, thou hast defiled thy sanctuaries with a multitude of thine iniquities, by the iniquity of thy traffic. Yeah, their merchandise, which goes into their monetary system. There's all iniquity, man. It's all backed by fraud. And these nations caught wind of that, and they try to separate themselves, or have separated themselves from joining with the harlot, man. Because once a harlot's been used and abused, what do you do with a harlot? You have to, basically get rid of her. And they're gonna get rid of that bitch by way of fire. That's what you're supposed to do with a harlot anyway. You're supposed to burn out the stake. It says, therefore will I bring forth a fire out of the midst of thee, it shall devour thee, and I will bring thee to ashes upon the earth in the sight of all them that behold thee. Yes, so America's through. That's why it says that these devils are going to heap treasures for the last days. So this is not going to make America great again. This is only going to lead to the further destruction and downfall of this American empire, so-called society, man. And, it'll be a beautiful day when we see this place get hit with nuclear fire, man. That's going to be the real Independence Day of the children of Israel, So this is what we're ushering in and heralding, the day of our Lord and Savior, Yahweh Shai. So with that, hopefully, brothers, are edified to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, Bah Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Bah Hashem, Rachak Hadash, and Shalom.